Get a new wife for my son. You're useless." Those cruel words were hurled at me without a shred of remorse by my mother-in-law on the very day our multi-generational house was finally completed. I always knew she didn't think much of me. Despite that, I had agreed to build this house, taking her feelings into consideration, but I never expected to be treated with such disdain. I stood there speechless as she smiled smugly. My husband looked as pale as a ghost. She had no idea how deeply her words would cut. "My name is Elena, and I'm 30 years old. After graduating from vocational school, I worked at a production company, drawing illustrations. 2 years ago, I became an independent contractor, working as a freelance designer. While I no longer enjoy the benefits and set holidays I had when I was employed, my income has increased significantly, allowing me to save more than enough. My husband, Camille, whom I married 3 years ago, has been my biggest supporter. He encouraged me when I was contemplating becoming independent. 'Elena, I believe you can be successful on your own,' he said. 'But if I fail, I'll lose my income, and it will be a burden to you, Camille. Don't worry about that. We're a team, remember? If you want to try something new, I want to support you. Camille, don't worry. No matter what happens, you're not alone. I'll support you with all my might.' 'Thank you. I'll give it a shot.' With Camille's unwavering support, I ventured into freelancing. In the beginning, jobs were scarce and my income was nearly zero. But my husband's encouragement kept me going. Now, 2 years later, I have more work than I can handle, from regular gigs to major projects. Somewhere along the line, my income surpassed both my previous earnings and my husband's. My annual income now exceeds $10 million. Our comfortable financial situation allowed us to enjoy more luxurious experiences together, like shopping and traveling, whenever Camille had time off. One day, while working from home, I started feeling unwell. When the discomfort persisted for several days, I visited the doctor. To my surprise, I discovered I was pregnant. I went home and nervously awaited my husband's return. That evening, as soon as he walked in, I brought up the topic. "Hey Camille, you know I haven't been feeling well lately, right? So I went to the hospital today." "Oh right, I'm sorry I couldn't go with you. Are you okay?" "Yeah, actually, there's something I need to tell you. I'm pregnant." "What? You're pregnant?" He stared at me with wide eyes, his bag slipping from his hand. "Really?" he asked, a smile spreading across his face. I nodded, beaming. Camille hugged me tightly. Thank you so much, Elena. I'm so happy." "Whoa, I can't breathe, Camille." "Oh, I'm sorry. I was just so excited." "Seeing you this happy makes me happy too, Camille. Let's work hard together." "Absolutely. I'll work even harder so that you'll be okay when you're close to giving birth and can't work." "Thank you. I plan to work until the last minute too," I said, smiling at Camille's tearful expression. As we started eating the dinner I had prepared, my husband could only talk about our future child. "I wonder what the gender will be. We need to prepare various baby items. Should I take paternity leave?" His enthusiasm made me laugh. He was probably mulling over all the details in his own way. At that moment, I decided to share something I had been contemplating for a while. "Hey Camille, there's something I've been thinking about for some time. How would you feel about us building our own house?" "Huh? A house? Our own?" "I've always imagined that when we have a child, I'd want us to live in a standalone house. I envision creating a room just for our child and call it lavish, but I've also been thinking about having a study room." "That sounds reasonable. With our future child in mind, our current condominium does feel a bit cramped." "Exactly. Now that we know I'm pregnant, I really want to make this happen if we can." "Yeah, I agree. Let's welcome our child into the best environment possible." So we made the decision to build a new house. On our days off, we toured model rooms and immediately began planning the floor layout, aiming to complete the house before the arrival of our child. About a month after discovering my pregnancy, we decided it was time to share the news with my in-laws. They lived about a 30-minute drive away from our condominium, but we seldom visited. The reason was simple, though unspoken. I found it challenging to deal with my mother-in-law. The issues began shortly after our marriage, perhaps even earlier when we visited his parents' house to announce our engagement. My mother-in-law had never been welcoming, often sporting a sullen expression. Initially, we used to visit them regularly, but she would always ask, "No children yet?" Her lack of understanding extended to my profession. She would remark, Drawing for a living isn't a real job. Whenever my husband and father-in-law were out of earshot, gradually, I began avoiding their house due to her insensitive comments. Even when my husband suggested visiting, I would politely decline, citing deadlines. But this time, despite my reservations, I felt obligated to go, believing she might be happy if we shared our pregnancy news. So, with my husband at the wheel, we set out for my in-laws' house. Upon arriving, I was greeted by my mother-in-law's usual sullen demeanor. Well, it's been a long time, hasn't it, Elena? Yes, it has, mother-in-law. I wonder what you've been up to. Surely not just drawing all this time, right? That's what my job entails. Oh, still as feisty as ever. I had hoped you might have changed after being away for so long. She whispered these words to me when we were alone, as she played the part of the doting mother-in-law in front of my husband and father-in-law. When my husband announced my pregnancy, she directed a saccharine voice towards me. Oh my Elena, congratulations. I'm truly delighted to hear I'll be seeing my first grandchild so soon. Aha, thank you. Is the baby a boy or a girl? We don't know yet. It's still too early to tell. Well, the gender doesn't matter as long as the baby is healthy. Yeah, you're absolutely right, I replied, forcing a smile to keep the atmosphere pleasant. After that, we all engaged in casual conversation, with my father-in-law joining in too. Then, amidst the light-hearted banter, my husband dropped a surprising piece of news. You know, we decided to build a new house, my husband announced. What? My mother-in-law's reaction was immediate. My ominous hunch proved correct as she responded with delight. Why not make it a two-family house? A two-family house? You mean you guys will live with us? Yes, our house is getting old. We were just debating whether to renovate or move entirely. Well, we didn't really plan to. I'm sure the child will benefit from living with grandparents, right? You agree too, don't you, Dad? My mother-in-law directed the conversation towards my father-in-law. Thrown into the discussion, my father-in-law kept his expression neutral, though there was a hint of joy as he muttered, Yeah, I guess so. Seeing his reaction, my mother-in-law turned to me, her eyes practically shouting, See? Elena, honey, Dad agrees too, so it's okay, right? She pressed. It's all so sudden. Why not? It seems more families are going nuclear these days. I'm sure we'll have a blast living together, she insisted. I hesitated, unsure how to respond. When the baby comes, working will be hard, you know. Wouldn't it be nice to have someone close by to help out with housework? My mother-in-law's suggestion gave me pause. Well, I had to admit she had a point. Balancing work and caring for a newborn would be challenging. If my mother-in-law was willing to lend a hand, it could make a significant difference. But did that mean we should live together? She seemed genuinely thrilled about the baby, which softened my reservations. Yet I found myself grappling with conflicting emotions. From then on, my mother-in-law's demeanor towards me shifted drastically. Regular texts flooded my phone. How are you feeling? If you need anything, just let me know. And other comforting messages. Perhaps the pregnancy prompted her change in attitude. Slowly, I began to let my guard down. One day, my husband posed the question, what are we going to do about the two-family house idea? As my mother-in-law's kindness grew, my perspective began to shift. Well, since your parents are so keen on the idea, maybe we should give it a try. Really? Are you sure? I thought you didn't get along with my parents. True, I was cautious around your mother and avoided visiting your parents' house. But ever since we learned about the baby, she's been remarkably kind. I think I'm willing to give it a chance. I see. Thank you, Elena. My mom can be a bit self-centered, but I think she's genuinely excited about our child. Yeah, I can sense that too. Well, we'll need to adjust our plans then. Let's talk to the construction company. A few days later, we returned to the construction company we had consulted before and informed them of our decision to proceed with building a two-family house. With some floor plans already in mind, we worked to expand upon them. The process of designing our new home progressed steadily, with us occasionally bringing my in-laws along to consult with the construction company. But I remained oblivious, unaware that this decision would lead to such a predicament. A few months later, as I entered my third trimester, construction began. When I called my mother-in-law, Emil, to share the news, she dropped a bombshell. I've waited so long for this moment. I was getting pretty tired of having to be nice to you. What? Mother-in-law? Your baby is a girl, isn't it? You're so useless. Didn't I tell you not to have anything but a boy? Wait a minute, when I told you the gender last time, you said girls' clothes are cute. That's nice too. That's because your husband and Camille were there. You're not an idiot, are you? Is that so? Her words struck me like a heavy blow. I was rendered speechless as she continued mercilessly. Just so you know, it's too late to regret it now. The house is already under construction. I was just pretending to get along with you to ensure we'd live in the new house. Mother-in-law. Oh, by the way, I've made quite a few arrangements. Look forward to it, all right. With that, she hung up, leaving me with the dial tone. I couldn't fathom what my mother-in-law meant by arrangements, but the realization that she hadn't changed at all hit me even harder. I wanted to confide in my husband, but I couldn't bring myself to disrupt his happiness as he joyfully anticipated the baby's arrival. I had hoped to settle the matter after giving birth and calming down by the time the house was completed. A few months later, our daughter arrived safely, and the house was finished about 6 months later. We had briefed my husband on the rough details, and we agreed to keep our interactions with my mother-in-law to a minimum while allowing her to live in the two-family house we had built. However, on the day of the handover, my mother-in-law, brimming with anticipation, said to me, "Finally, this moment has arrived, Elena. Thank you for your efforts. From now on, you're on your own. Best of luck with your job and childcare." Excuse me, mother-in-law? Not only me, but my husband and father-in-law were also left speechless. My mother-in-law, perhaps thinking that since the house was built, anything would suffice, continued to utter heartless words. "I'm sure you know I despise a bride as charmless as you. If you're aware, why not just leave with that child?" Wait a moment, what are you saying? I found a new bride for my son. Divorce your incompetent husband again, all right? I've reached out to everyone I know who has a daughter. I searched for a docile girl among them. I believe she'll be obedient and become a housewife as I desire. In that moment, something inside me shattered with a deafening crash. A new bride? You must be joking. I was considering letting bygones be bygones and allowing her to stay with us. Enough, I'm going to evict her. With unwavering determination, I confronted the smirking mother-in-law before me. You're the one who needs to leave. Mother-in-law, what? What are you talking about? This house was built by my son, so there's no reason for me to leave. Oh, you're quite confident, aren't you? Naturally, even if you ask me to leave, it's my son's house, so I'll continue living here. Observing my mother-in-law's excessive confidence, I couldn't help but chuckle. Meanwhile, my husband spoke up slowly, his face draining of color. Mom, don't tell me you didn't know. Ha! What do you mean, Camille? This house, this duplex, was built under Elena's name. What? The proud smile my mother-in-law had been wearing just moments ago vanished instantly, replaced by a look of shock. Visibly upset, she struggled to form her words. What are you talking about? She doesn't even have a job. How could she? That's what I've been telling you. Elena is an independent woman. She earns much more than I do. Is that true? Absolutely. When we decided to build this duplex, we exceeded our budget, but Elena covered the extra costs. What? That can't be true. The once smiling mother-in-law quickly paled, her expression now ashen. The final blow came from my father-in-law. He leveled a sharp accusation at my mother-in-law, who crumpled under the weight of his words. What was that remark you made earlier? Are you telling me you've been treating Elena like this behind our backs all along? And what about wanting a new wife? No, that's not it. I was just considering what's best for Camille. What's best for Camille? This was all you're doing. How could you treat Elena this way? I never thought you could stoop so low. I wanted to. No, please. Father-in-law declared, I'm going to get the divorce papers, and left the room. Left alone with me, mother-in-law turned to me, her eyes brimming with tears. Elena, please, you have to help me. If things continue like this, he's going to divorce me. What do you mean by help? This situation is of your own making, isn't it? Please, just say that I admit I was wrong. From now on, I'll accept you as my daughter-in-law, okay? Please. Despite her plea, there was no sincerity in her words. Looking at mother-in-law, who cared only about herself. I felt a wave of disgust wash over me. I stared at her with the coldest gaze I could muster and spoke firmly. Accept me as your daughter-in-law. Your acceptance means nothing to me. We're not a family anymore, remember? You have the audacity to apologize without meaning it? You're despicable. How dare you call me? Excuse me. You, who have been hurling insults at me this entire time, are now playing the victim. You squandered the opportunity I extended to you. From this moment on, I will never forgive you. You are not welcome in this house, and you will never see our daughter again. If you comprehend that, then leave right now. You are worthless." Leaving mother-in-law standing there, my husband and I, holding our daughter, entered the house. We locked the door behind us, denying mother-in-law entry. Despite her relentless shouting outside, we ignored her. Father-in-law returned with the divorce papers. He insisted mother-in-law complete them on the spot, and then promptly filed them. It transpired that mother-in-law had been borrowing money from father-in-law. She was given an ultimatum: repay the money immediately or face divorce. Being a housewife with no means to repay the debt within a few days, mother-in-law reluctantly opted for divorce. We allowed father-in-law inside the house and secured the door once more. After some time, mother-in-law continued causing a commotion outside our house, but before long she vanished. Later, we learned that mother-in-law's sister had reached out to father-in-law, informing him that mother-in-law had sought refuge with her. It seemed that mother-in-law had mistreated her sister in the past, nearly driving them apart. Now, in return for providing shelter, her sister was exacting revenge by assigning mother-in-law to all the household chores. It was clear she wasn't enjoying the easy life she once had. Meanwhile, our family of 4 was thriving. Father-in-law, a man of few words, doted on our daughter, showering her with affection. His presence alone sufficed to fill her with love. Looking ahead, we aim to continue building a joyful and nurturing home, working hand in hand with my husband and father-in-law.